Let's talk about complex modeling then, because a good question would be, does DuckDB obviate our need for for Postgres SQL-like databases? And do we still have a place for those databases in our tool set? I think so. And I think so because I think that when we look at DuckDB, DuckDB is at a very nice spot in between the flexibility, generality, and complexity of a tool like Postgres in terms of the features that it supports, and the speed of something like an in-memory data tool like Pandas. You can see our Postgres result finally came in. So let's quickly just kind of go through at least the top line features and see what is or isn't supported in DuckDB. Because I'll tell you, this is another place where people try to cheat you. They cheat you by giving you benchmarks of things that you do commonly, but are not exhaustively all the things you need to do. And those benchmarks look really good, but then you actually apply it to your work and you realize that when you include all of the complexity of the actual problem you need to solve, the benchmarks don't look that good anymore. Another way that they cheat you is they say, this is a drop-in replacement for a tool you already use. Basically, anytime somebody says, such and such tool is a drop-in replacement for Pandas, just change or import, they are probably lying to you, because if you are using Pandas the proper way, then you probably are making use of index alignment, which almost none of these tools actually include. So what they mean is, this is a drop-in replacement for the dumb way that you use Pandas, where you're fighting against Pandas, and by the way, it's also faster than the dumb way that you use Pandas where you're fighting against Pandas, which by the way, is not that compelling. Similarly, almost every time anybody has ever said, SQL is too complicated, here is a drop-in replacement for SQL, or here is my tool, and it implements an SQL-like dialect, it is often the case that they implement a very, very small subset. However, I was happily surprised to see how much of a at least top-line feature set of SQL that DuckDB actually supports. Here in this example, we can see a couple of features that we use all the time. Of course, simple selects, it would be very hard for them to say that it supports SQL if it didn't support simple selects, but we do have CTEs, common table expressions. We do have subqueries. And it is the case that even some proper SQL standalone database products didn't really have support for some of these features until fairly long into their own lifetime. When we talk about DuckDB, we do have support for many of the data types that we might see in our programs and many of the data types we might see in other database tools. Data types such as our numeric types, integers, doubles, or integers and floating point values, as well as additional data types like Boolean values, or at least bit values, as well as in Postgres, decimal values with a fixed number of digits of precision. So this is a decimal value with, I think, 3 digits after the decimal point and 18 digits before the decimal point. For financial purposes or whatever purpose that you need, fixed precision for your decimal values. We have datetime support here. So you can see here, I can store a timestamp with a time zone, or a date or an interval, what we call a time delta in Python. Although I think that one thing that's a little bit disappointing is the timestamp with time zone. When I provided it with a time zone to create one of these, didn't actually read in or even pay attention to that time zone. It just threw away any data after the time portion, and instead just defaulted to my local time zone. So here you can see that it's fairly likely to be the case that this tool is just storing the data in UTC and then performing transformations on data input and data output based off of some global time zone parameter. And so very much like in other tools that you might use, you may actually find yourself using the timestamp more often than timestamp with time zone, especially if, for example, the data has multiple time zones where the data was collected. Then you might need a timestamp and then a separate time zone column. You might have to perform those computations on either the client end or as part of the underlying queries. Unlike many tools, up to and including SQLite, DuckDB does include aggregate data types. This is one of my favorite features from Postgres, and I was very happily surprised to see this in DuckDB. Here you can see an array type, an actual array type, which, although it is starting to toe the line of what we might consider proper database normalization procedure, is still something that is very, very useful in practice. There are at least 1 or 2 problems that are really tricky to solve relationally that end up being quite easy to solve when you have an actual array type, or in DuckDB's terminology, a list type, especially cases where you need to note, this is the order in which somebody likes something, and you need to insert, remove, and reorder things in an atomic fashion. We can access this data with one indexing. Do note that one thing that's a little bit tricky here is if we perform indexed operations on this data and we're out of bounds, we just get a null value back. So we don't get any other warning. So we can do out of bounds accesses to these and they'll just coalesce to a null value. So we have to be a little bit careful of dealing with nulls, especially when we deal with these aggregate types. In addition to the list type, we also have support for a record type. Just like in Postgres, here it's called a struct type in DuckDB. This is a data type, not too unlike a tuple where we have a fixed number of fields. Those fields can be, let's actually make it like that. Actually, the double quotes is for column names, so here we'll do like that. These fields can be heterogeneous, like our Python tuple, and this is very much like a name tuple. We have some kind of heterogeneous data with the ability to access each one of these fields by name. Do note that if we try to access a field that doesn't exist, this is actually an error. So out of bounds array access, not an error. Out of bounds list access, not an error. Out of bounds struct access is an error. We also have a mapping type. And this I thought was quite interesting. Here, this is more or less a Python dictionary, the ability to represent some kind of lookup with unique keys and values. And any built-in data type can be used as the keys, and any built-in data type can use the values. I was expecting this to be typically a string to integer mapping type. That's usually when people try to introduce their first mapping type. That's what they have. JavaScript, as you know, only has the ability in its built-in object to have string keys. You actually need to reach for a specific map type in JavaScript. But here we have a generalized map or dictionary type, any type of keys, any type of values. The syntax for accessing elements is a little bit hokey. We don't have any built-in syntax for it. We have to use an element at function, which we provide the map and the underlying element we have. This is not altogether too dissimilar to, say, how we might access some of the Postgres JSON data, except we do have operators for Postgres JSON data that make it a little bit easier, and we don't have any operators here. Do note that if a lookup fails, just like for an array out of bounds error, we just get not a null value, we get an empty list. So we have to check to see if the list is empty, which is distinct from checking if the list's first value is null. Otherwise, we wouldn't be able to disambiguate between. We performed a lookup and the thing that we looked up was null versus we performed a lookup and something was missing. So this is actually the way we can correctly determine if something failed. I don't believe we have a way to look to see if a key exists or not. And so there may be a little bit of clumsiness of working with this type. And as we'd expect, Postgres has done quite a bit to shave down some of the rough edges around some of these special data types. Here you can see in DuckDB there's still a little bit of clumsiness around using them, but it's fantastic to have them in the first place. DuckDB also provides us with a union type. This is to allow us to have homogeneous collections where the underlying data may be one or two, any kind of sum type. And so here you can see a union type where we're storing a string next to a numerical value. We do have to provide what the union is ahead of time. So this isn't completely heterogeneous, but heterogeneous subject to some predefinition of it can be either this or this or this. In this case, a string value or a numeric value. We have CTEs. In DuckDB, we also have recursive CTEs. I was quite surprised to see this. Here, you can see the typical connectivity example that we use to determine, given some starting point, what is a breadth first search of all the nodes that could be reached from that starting point, which we typically implement via a recursive common table expression in SQL. And the common table expression in SQL requires that we have a couple of different pieces of functionality. We need to have common table expressions, we need to have set operations, and we need to have the ability to do recursive common table expressions, all of which we have in DuckDB. The one thing that we might be missing here that is actually very useful in Postgres is cycle detection, or at least automatic syntax for cycle detection. In Postgres, we would do something like, say, I believe something like cycle, set, whatever, on, whatever, and it would automatically create another column with to indicate if we've hit a cycle or not, another column to indicate what the path is that we followed, so we don't need to manually construct this path. And it would also truncate the breadth first search if it detected a cycle. Here, we don't have that automatic cycle detection. So if I were to add a node looping back around to A, this is probably just going to run forever. I'm going to have to figure out how to implement that cycle detection manually myself. And that's just going to be very clumsy.